right, y'all. Welcome back and happy Tuesday. Today we're going to be breaking down Tennessee's offense versus Alabama's defense. A lot of Tennessee fans are going to find more confidence in this matchup, rightfully so, because we've proven over the course of the year this is one of the best offenses in the entire nation, and I think it'll be the best offense that Alabama's faced so far this year. And it feels good just because this offense is totally different from what we've seen from Coach Heupel since he's been at Tennessee, where it was a lot of gimmicky stuff going on, right? You spread the field out real wide. You're always running that tempo. Now it's a lot more balanced, not just from a run to pass ratio, but also within our running scheme, within our passing scheme. We also have trick plays. It's more pro style. So the issues that we ran into previously, where you could show us one look and it just shut down everything, you can't do that anymore. And I'm going to tell y'all, man, Alabama's defense, it's better than some people think. Obviously they're very, very talented. There's a whole lot of team speed, with their offense and with their defense. But I think especially with their defense, it'll probably be the fastest defense that Tennessee's seen so far this year. But everyone has their strengths and their weaknesses. I just so happen to think that the weaknesses for Alabama's defense are the strengths for Tennessee's offense. And we talked about that yesterday, too, with our defense versus their offense. It's just styles make the fights. And I feel like, man, Tennessee matches up well versus Alabama. But with all those things being said, man, we're going to get into it, break it down as much as we possibly can. If you like this type of content, please make sure to like and subscribe to the channel. If you love it, share it with somebody, man. Share it on social media. Share it with Tennessee fans, with Alabama fans, with college football fans. P and I are still trying to grow. That'll help us out tremendously. But let's go ahead and jump into things, man. Starting off with the overview of Alabama's defense. So in the top left, you can see their personnel groupings. Their nickel is a 3-3-5. They run that about 50% of the time. With the nickel, it's going to be pretty good versus to run. It's going to be even better versus to pass than like a base defense. There's going to be more speed out there than a base defense. And with the 3-3-5, you can line up a lot of different ways. You can bring the pressure from a lot of different spots. That's the one thing that I'd say is the most consistent with all of these different personnels is the blitzes can come from a lot of places, but they're not running their nickel as much as most teams do. Okay. So once we come down to their base, they're running their base defense at 37%. Only two teams in the SEC run their base defense more than Alabama does. That's Oklahoma. So they run their 4-3 50% of the time. And then LSU, they're running their 2-5 defense about 73% of the time. And I have no idea why, you're in that state where there's so many big dudes that you could bring to your team. And I mean, you should be able to play a much heavier front than what LSU's doing. I don't know what they're doing out there, but either way, Alabama is running the 3-4 more than any team in the SEC. Now, as we talked about, with the nickel, that's going to be better versus the pass than your base defense. The base defense is actually supposed to be better versus to run. The interesting thing is that Bama's running it so much, and they're still one of the worst teams in the conference at stopping the run. You typically want to try to run your 3-4, versus to run versus the heavier, personnel. So like a 12 personnel, a 13 personnel. It's not supposed to be as good versus the pass. But Alabama has some really fast linebackers that are good out in pass coverage, especially if they're playing zone or if they're, manned up versus a tight end. But I do feel like Tennessee should be able to run the football well versus Alabama. And the simple fact that they're running their base defense so much and still ain't stopping the run tells me that there's not a lot of room for growth for them to get better at stopping the run. That's definitely one of the places that Tennessee's strong at and Alabama's kind of like weaker at. Now, their 2-3-6, that's their dime. There's a lot of speed out there. It's not going to be as much beef. You can run on that pretty well, but they typically would run that in like some passing situations, but they have run it more in like regular situations over like the past couple of weeks. So we'll see how that looks. But they're running that at about 12% of the time. Now let's move on and talk about their blitzing ratios. All right. So from top to bottom, 29%, and then versus to run, 27%, versus to pass at about 32%. All those numbers are going to be about average for SEC. It's not a lot of volume with their blitzes, but like we touched on, they can bring it from a lot of different places. There's a lot of speed on that defense. That's more of the tricky part in just being able to pick things up is, hey, can you mentally figure out who you're supposed to be getting? Do we have the proper hot routes and all that, which now Tennessee has. We didn't really have that since Coach Heupel's been here outside of this year. Now, I also want to obviously touch on the coverages that Alabama likes to run the most of. It's just the top four. That's not all the coverages that they run. So obviously quarters coverage, that's not up here, but they do run and I have to make sure that I point that out. But they love to run cover 3. That's a deeper zone coverage where you have 3 players playing deep. It's typically better versus to run than some other zone coverages, but it has its flaws, right? So like underneath outside stuff, there's some flaws there. If you're running 4 verts, there's some flaws there. Crossing patterns, a lot of things that Tennessee likes to do, there are flaws, all right? So they run at about 43.4% of the time. The next coverage, cover 2, that is another zone where there's two players playing deep. A lot easier to run versus this zone coverage. And then there's some holes like over the middle of this defense. It's tougher to throw the football down the field, but there's some gaping holes down the field, especially down the middle of the field. But they run that about 21.4% of the time. Cover one, that's a man coverage. Cover zero, that's also man. Cover one means that there's one player playing deep. And they're running that about 13.4% of the time. Cover zero, that means that there's zero players playing deep. Again, that is typically going to be just like straight up man to man, or you're going to be blitzing. There's a lot of different ways that you could do that, but they're only running that about 8.6% of the time. So with their zone coverages, I think that their linebackers do a good job of dropping the depth, getting into those passing lanes. Is never going to be perfect for anybody, but I think that they're probably going to be better at that than what we've seen so far this year. They play very well out in space with their backers. Now, with their man coverage, I don't think that they're going to be super, super great. Like one of the things that I do want to point out, if Bama's running that 3-4 defense, one of the things that I know Coach Heupel's going to do, because he always saves stuff for Georgia, Florida, and Alabama. But if they go to that 3-4, or we can force them into the 3-4 by running 12 personnel, split the field out wide, go empty sets. Alabama can play that two different ways. They can either match up their linebackers on our tight ends, which means that we would send our tight ends out very, very wide, take a linebacker out of the box or two linebackers out of the box, and then be able to run on that. Joey Aguilar, he can use his legs too. That's very favorable numbers. Or they're just going to keep their linebackers inside of the box, and now we can get the wide receivers matched up inside of the slot. And that's a very, very tough mismatch for their backers. So I wanted to point that out. But I think that in man-to-man coverage, their secondary shows some good things. I would say that their cornerbacks aren't going to be as good in like pure in pure coverage, especially down the field, as Tennessee's are, but they are deeper. Like they have more cornerbacks who are capable of covering, but their safeties are just like a lot better than Tennessee's in coverage and stopping the run, all that. It's almost like they don't even play in the same, like on the same level of football. It is just totally, totally different. So they're pretty good there. I don't think that their safeties are super great in coverage, but they are good. Wanted to point out all those things because now we need to go ahead and jump into how Joey Aguilar looks versus these different coverages, right? So starting off with cover three, which is what Alabama runs the most of. It's also what Joey Aguilar has seen the most of. He's thrown the football 57 times, and he's hitting on passes at 68.4%. Those are excellent numbers. That's over his total average. And then as far as cover two, which is what Alabama runs the second most of, Joey's thrown the football 31 times, and he's at 71%. That is more and better than any other coverage. You got to love that. So obviously, Joey Aguilar, he's doing his best versus the coverages that Alabama likes to run the most of. Now, cover one, Joey Aguilar's thrown the football 32 times. He's at about 56.3% there. And then we have cover zero, where Joey's only thrown the football 8 times. He's at about 62.5% there, which is good. And then this is quarters coverage. Like we just talked about, Alabama also will run this, but we won't be focusing on that too much. Just know that it is there. So moving on up, let's talk about Joey's passing yards. It should be higher in the, versus the coverages that he's faced the most of. So versus cover three, 610 yards. He's thrown 3 passing touchdowns. Versus cover two, 382 yards with 2 passing touchdowns. Versus cover one, 304 yards with 4 touchdowns, which this is part of the reason that you can't always just run man, right? Like, I mean, there's a strength and a weakness to everything that you do. Whenever you run man, it might be good for like underneath stuff, but down the field, you're pretty vulnerable. So that's why there's more touchdowns here. Now, versus cover zero, Joey has 47 yards. He has no passing touchdowns. And let's move on to the rest of this because we have a few more that we need to get to. So cover three, just as far as, the interceptions thrown, he's only thrown 1 here. So he's taking really good care of the football versus cover three. He's actually taking better care of the football than really any other coverage. If you're looking at the sheer volume of things, he has not been sacked in cover three. Cover two, he's thrown 1 interception. He's been sacked 1 time. Cover zero, he's thrown 1 pick, hasn't been sacked at all. And then versus cover one, he's thrown 2 picks, and they're saying that he's been sacked 2 times. Now, one of those sacks is going to be incorrect because PFF says that he has 4 sacks given up, but he's really only been sacked 3 times. Now, let's take a look at just like a few more things. So this is just like the average time to throw. So in cover three, you can see about 2.58 seconds, and his passer rating is at 113.9. So looking good right there. And in cover two, he is taking about 3.17 seconds to throw. Passer rating is at 120.6, which is really high versus cover one. 2.69 seconds to throw. Passer rating is at 102.1. And then cover zero, 2.3 seconds to throw. But his passer rating drops a lot. That's just because there's simply going to be a lot more pressure getting to him. And then also, I think a big part of that is just, it's very small sample size. It's only 8 passes, but people probably weren't making catches that they probably should have caught. And then I'll just show you what the quarters looks like, okay? So Joey Aguilar does very, very well versus all of the things that Alabama likes to run. With all that being said, let's take a look at the weaknesses of this defense, just the way that I see it. Number one, Tennessee can run inside zone, and Tennessee runs a lot of inside zone. We're good at inside zone. And I'm saying that just because you can run straight at the teeth of this defense, right? With the three-man fronts, that's typically where you want to try to go, especially 3-4. We'll talk about their linebackers. They're not that big. They are very fast. The defense is very fast. You want to try to run directly at speed. We can move those guys. Second thing is going to be gap scheme runs. So that's like power plays, pulling around, all that. Tennessee's the best at that within our running offense. We also feel like Tennessee can throw the football down the field very, very well versus the secondary. Like I said, they're going to be good in coverage, but down the field, they don't look too good. And we already saw how Joey Aguilar operates versus the types of coverages that they like to run. So Tennessee definitely checks off the top three boxes. Mobile quarterback is one that we could also check off, and we've proven that. We've shown that Joey Aguilar does a good job using his legs. And like we talked about with some of the different mismatch things, we can use his legs probably even better versus this type of defense and versus their tendencies. So let's move on and talk about how things match up as far as the talent. Alabama has 32 blue chip caliber players on their defense. They have 12 5-stars. Tennessee has 20 blue chip caliber players on our offense with 3 5-stars. The talent gap is pretty big. It's not huge. It's closer than it was last season, but it's still a pretty big talent gap. Like I said, they are a talented team. All right, so moving on to the actual stats, you can see the strength of schedule on top of each team. Alabama's strength of schedule so far is at number 2. Tennessee's is at number 47. But we look good, like we're winning in most of these categories, but it's not that big of a difference as what we've seen versus some previous defenses, right? So you have to keep that in mind too. We have the number 1 scoring offense in the entire country. The scoring defense is still top 25. But one of the places that I think that we should be really, really good at is with our pass protection. This is the best offensive line that Coach Heupel has had since he's been here in run blocking and pass blocking, just the whole deal. Everything looks a lot better there. So we're top 10 as far as, like not giving up sacks. And they're, almost outside of the top 100 as far as giving up or, as far as getting to the quarterback. They're not generating a whole lot of pressure. They're not closing whenever they do get the pressure either. So that's a very, very beneficial thing for Tennessee. Now, as far as our passing offense, it's top 10. Theirs is top 5. I think that we've talked about it, man. Styles make the fights. We are going to, their passing numbers will not look as good versus Tennessee is what they look like right here. We can see with the rushing, Tennessee is going to be able to do that. We already touched on that. So they're actually giving up almost 5 yards per carry. I think this is a game that Tennessee might be able to get close to like 5.5, maybe even 6 yards per carry. You see that we're already averaging over 5 yards per carry. Third downs, Tennessee's doing a really good job there. Didn't do the best job versus Arkansas, but there's some things that Arkansas probably does differently than what Alabama does. But their third down defense definitely isn't great. It's about on par with where Tennessee's third down defense is. Red zone, very, very close matchup here. We got to find some ways to make some things happen inside of the red zone. I think that we can, especially because we're a very strong running team and we can set things up off of that. And then turnovers. You can see Tennessee's not doing a great job with our turnovers, but Alabama is. That's going to be skewed. We know 4 of those 5 interceptions that they're saying that Joey Aguilar threw hit his wide receivers, tight ends, or running backs like right in the hands or right in the face, and they popped it up and let the other team grab it. So that's definitely going to be skewed. Now, let me show y'all this, okay? I want for y'all to see the 2 deep for their defense because it's very, very interesting with their front 4, okay, which is all the guys that you're seeing in red. Like, that's all of their defensive linemen. They're not nearly as big as what they have been previously. As a matter of fact, of all the SEC teams that we face, for sure, this is going to be the smallest defensive front that we've faced. There's only 2 players over 300 pounds. They're very, very light. So that just goes back to my point that we can definitely run the football on those guys. And then looking at their linebackers, that's all the players that's in white. You're seeing that everyone except for one guy is under 230 pounds. Now, as I've stated, they've got good players everywhere. I really think that their linebackers, they're very good, especially with their speed. But if you run right at them, you can get your hands on them. You're going to be able to block them. You're going to be able to move them for the most part. Number 41, he's really good. Obviously, he's their biggest guy. But all of their players, like all of their backers, they do a good job out in pass coverage. They, get to depth well, so on and so forth. But looking at their secondary, great size here. They've got that one cornerback, Dijon Lee, number 5, who's 6'4", over 200 pounds. They have really, really good size. And they do have good coverage, especially with the underneath stuff. But, man, they've got some weaknesses. There are some holes. And I think that Tennessee's wide receivers should be able to, have a really, really big day. Now, let's talk about their 5 key players on defense. We always tell y'all that there's a lot more guys that we could throw up here, but we'll start off with their linebacker. So, number 10, Justin Jefferson, 6'1, 227, redshirt senior. He's leading the team in tackles with 35. He has 1 sack, 1 interception, 1 pass breakup, and 1 forced fumble. He's really good. I think he looks good out in coverage, moves well in space. When they're in their 3-3-5, he's more of like a middle linebacker, but whenever they go to their 3-4, he's playing more of like that stand-up edge rushing sort of a linebacker. So that helps him out with their pass coverage once they go to that 3-4 because he can do it. He's not going to be super, super great, but versus like a tight end or versus like a running back, he could definitely get that done. Next linebacker is number 0, Lawson. He's 6'2", 228, redshirt senior. And on the year, he has the second most tackles with 25. He has 2 pass breakups and 1 forced fumble. He's always playing at Mike. Sometimes he might go to the outside, but mostly he's going to be playing at Mike, whether it's a 3-3-5 or it's a 3-4 or even within like that 2-3-6. But he looks really good playing out in space as well. Very similar to like Justin Jefferson. He's just a little bit bigger. He actually looks, well, yeah, he's listed as being taller, but he just looks like he's probably like 2 inches taller and maybe looks like he's about 5 to 10 pounds heavier. But either way, those guys sideline to sideline play very, very well out in space. Now, safety, number 18, Bray Hubbard, 6'2", 213. He's a junior. He has the 3rd most tackles with 24, leading the team in interceptions with 3, and he has 1 forced fumble. He's a guy at safety that can always play inside of the box. It doesn't matter what their front is. If it's a 3-3-5, if it's a 3-4, if it's a 2-3-6, whatever, he can play like a linebacker, does a really good job of getting off blocks with strength and setting edges and all that. Looks really strong from that standpoint. His coverage is pretty solid. It's not as good as you might think with all those interceptions. He's a lot more like opportunistic from that standpoint. But yeah, he's a guy that I would want to try to target in coverage for sure. And then let's talk about their edge guys. So number 22, LT Overton, 6'5", 278. He's a senior, 20 tackles, leads the team in sacks with 3. His pressure rate is 15.7%. He can line up as a hand in the dirt defensive end or as a stand-up, Russian sort of a defensive end. They'll move him in some different spots. Not as much as the next guy. He's kind of twitchy, but he's not super twitchy. I would say he would be like even less twitchy than our least twitchy strong side end, if that makes sense. He does have some twitch, but he's going to generate the pass rush with bull rush, not as much with pass rush moves or with twitch or any of that. Now, this next guy, number 42, I'm not even going to try to say his name, but he is very twitchy. He's like our Leos. All right, so number 22, more of like a strong side end. Number 42, more like Tennessee's Leos. Listed at 6'3", 248, redshirt sophomore, 18 tackles, 1 sack, 2 forced fumbles, and his pressure rate is at 18.9%. He does a good job of generating pressure, but he's not closing very well. And they'll line him up in a lot of different spots. They'll line him up over the center. They'll line him up, on the outside. They'll line him up as like a stand-up linebacker. He can blitz from there. He can cover from there. So he plays very well out in space also. They have a lot of very, very versatile players. But with all those things being said, man, I want to get into like my final thoughts for this whole matchup with Tennessee's offense versus Alabama's defense. So as we touched on, super versatile. They can do a lot of good things. They have a whole lot of team speed. I think that we can run the football at them well. We should be able to move their front. I think that we can block their front. They're not great with their pass rush. They're not going to be great at stopping the run, especially, again, if we're going directly at them. Now, Tennessee does like to run some outside stuff. Got to be more careful doing that. I think within Tennessee's screening game, we got to set that up well just because those guys float to the football very well. It's not just with the linebackers. I think that their front is very fast, versus like the average SEC defensive line. And their secondary, they also have really, really good speed. I think that those guys are good at stopping the run. Not going to be great at stopping the passes down the field. We will have some things schemed up. And one of the first things that I probably should have touched on is whenever an offense goes on the road, it's more difficult as far as, is the crowd going to impact our silent count? Are we going to get more like pre-snap penalties, which we don't want to give them anything extra because we know the referees are going to be cheating for them. So don't give them nothing extra. But can we be kind of clean or, relatively clean from that standpoint on the road? And can the offense get to clicking? Because versus Mississippi State, it didn't click as well as it probably should and could have. Some of that's going to be from some bad special teams play. We'll talk about special teams coming up on Wednesday. But, I'm curious to see how things match up from Alabama's crowd, which I think is going to be louder than it was last time that we went there because with Coach Saban, they were more spoiled. Tennessee wasn't as good of a team, so they didn't really probably have too much of a reason to get loud. But I think that in this game, they will be loud. So we have to overcome all that type of stuff. But I think that we'll be able to find plenty of success. Just take good care of the football. And I think that we can put up points. But those are my thoughts. Please share y'all's down in that comment section. And as always, y'all please make sure to like and subscribe to the channel. And we'll be talking to y'all maybe a little bit later on. Thanks, peace. Thanks for watching, and please make sure to like and subscribe to the channel because that keeps us growing inside the YouTube algorithm. And if you did like this video, here's another one that you might also enjoy. Thank you, thank you, thank you. We'll see you on the next one. Peace.